Now, we worked in partnership with the Rotarian Action Group on Population and Development in northern Nigeria to address the issue of obstetric fistula, something that probably disappeared from Australia with the invention of the C-section in the 1800s. But this is still all too common in Nigeria, where girls are commonly married off into polygamous marriages with older men at age 9, and they start out as servants in the kitchen, but they end up getting pregnant as soon as they're fertile and trying to give birth at 12 years old with an immature pelvis and no professional assistance. They often have obstructed labor that can go on for days and basically tears them to shreds and leaves them incontinent. Now, because the value of women is pretty low, these women get thrown out on the street very often by their husbands, and they live as beggars. There are 800,000 women with unrepaired fistulas in northern Nigeria. And Rotary thought it would be a good idea to fund surgical centers. And they wanted somebody to promote awareness of this. And we said, by the way, while we're on the air, we're also going to promote delaying marriage and childbearing until adulthood and use of family planning. So we did that. At the fistula centers, 54% of the clients coming in named the program as the reason they had come. And at the family planning centers, 33% of new family planning adopters named the program as the reason they had come. We're on our second program now in 4 states of northern Nigeria, and close to 2/3 of people seeking family planning now name the program. We've done work in partnership with TV Globo in Brazil and have measured the effects of one of their programs. They do many telenovelas dealing with a range of issues. The one that dealt with teenage pregnancy about a year and a half ago, we studied through BEMFAM, which is the Planned Parenthood affiliate there, clinics, and 1/3 of the women in those clinics were there because of that one soap opera. And then I'll just run through very quickly some of the other countries. This is a program in the Philippines, Hope After the Dawn, I can't say it in Tagalog, that Maggie Kadanan produced, and it dealt heavily with domestic abuse and was studied by a communication scholar named Arvind Singhal and shown to have dramatic effects for both men and women on this subject. We've dealt with child trafficking in West Africa. We're on the air currently with the Voice of Vietnam. Currently in Rwanda, 57% of people seeking family planning and 59% of people seeking HIV tests name our program at the clinics. And we have just gone on the air in Senegal with 2 new programs. And in the U.S., in partnership with Sonny Fox, who's our West Coast representative and former chair of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, we've been holding briefings for Hollywood writers, the most recent one on climate, health, security, and population issues. It was done in November. And these are the countries in which we are developing projects. And I thank you for your attention and be happy to take questions.
Away program, so that might well lead on to...
Yeah, we had an inquiry from Bush Radio, I think they're in Darwin area, a couple of years ago, inquiring whether we could help them do a program promoting family planning for the indigenous population. That has not happened, but I hope that maybe the discussions we'll have while we're here could lead to something there. But certainly for television consumption by Australians, I think it would be a great idea to talk to scriptwriters. Yes?
You mentioned that the United States was the third fastest growing population.
In terms of absolute numbers.
In terms of what?
Absolute numbers, not rate.
Not what?
Not the rate of growth, but the absolute number of increase. In other words, India is number 1 with 18 million a year, a new Bombay per year. China's number 2 with about 8 million, and the U.S. is growing by 3 million people a year. So it's third.
And that answers my question.
Okay. Yes?
Do you know in these areas, especially in Africa, what the use is of mobile phones?
It's increasing. And indeed, I didn't mention, we are in the process of working with the electronic gaming department of a college near where we're located that teaches students how to design electronic games, to create an electronic game that will be on both internet platform and cell phone platform that will primarily address violence against women and trying to reduce the impact that many electronic games have that promote inherently violence against women. And this is something funded by the United Nations. We also, and in fact Maggi's program in the Philippines did this, asked for feedback from listeners via text messaging, and in a couple of weeks' time received 15,000 text messages from listeners. So, in fact, cell phone use is obviously dramatically increasing around the world. In China, it's a huge market, something like 360 million cell phone owners. I know a communications, television and telephone entrepreneur working in China who told me that on Chinese New Year's, they offered a prize in response to submitting a text message. I imagine some people entered more than once because they received 1 billion text messages that day. And I think the prize was like a new car. 1 billion text messages at 10 cents US each is about $100 million, split 3 ways between him, the telephone company, and the television station. So it's a nice day. And it more than paid for the car. So indeed, the cell phone industry is one that long-term holds potential for us for a lot of communication. You know, when you're looking at a little teeny screen, you're not going to watch a half-hour program. So you could listen. You can have shorter episodes also that would be good, audio or video, on cell phones. So it's something we're very keenly aware of. So far, we're mostly in countries where people in the rural areas still can't afford cell phones, but increasingly you find them everywhere. Yes?
Does the emotional approach compared to the reasoning approach, which quite clearly is working very well in the countries you're working with, is it the case also that in Western worlds where we have universal literacy that the emotional approach works better than the reasoning approach?
I think so.
I suspect it is.
I think so. Clearly, we do have an intellectual component, and the epilogues are indeed used to give information. You know, if you want to do what this character is doing, here's what you can do about it. But combining the two is a very powerful way. But most of us are influenced by emotion in many ways more than reason, and particularly true for adolescents and young adults. There's a, no longer alive, Princeton professor named Solomon Asch, who did a study of conformism of students at Princeton. And he told, before the class started, he secretly told every student but one to lie. And then he held up 2 objects to the class that now included the student who hadn't been clued in. And he said, we're doing a study in visual perception. From where you're sitting, which looks longer, the glass or the card? And they all named the card. And when it got to the poor student who had not been clued in, and there was a hidden camera focused on his face and he was sweating, he named the card. Every once in a while, there would be a student, he did this over and over, it would be a student who would say, well, maybe it's just my angle in the room, but it looks like the glass is longer, and they'd all look at him as if he was somehow deranged. And then they'd do 2 other objects, and he'd go along with the crowd. So clearly, conformism I think is an instinctive behavior. It's necessary to conform in order to survive in societies, and particularly when we were all Stone Age people. If you didn't conform to the rules of the society, you were out, and that was often a fatal decision. So conformism has very important roots historically or evolutionarily